Welcome, everybody, to You Learn, You Turn. This is Liz McKissick coming at you live, and I am so excited today because I have our CEO of Youturn Health, Hamilton Baiden, good friend, wonderful recovery advocate, and say hey, Ham.
Hey, Ham. And more importantly, Liz, we're friends, not me being the CEO of the company. So,
Well, I think it's important for the topic we're going to discuss today for people to know that the opioid crisis is not just something that we read about. It is real, and it's affecting people in every demographic across the United States. And I feel like I'm getting off topic already, but I feel like we have got to, instead of, like COVID is making a resurgence right now, but we've all just gotten so sick of hearing about it that it's like we're numb. I think it's the same way with the opioid crisis, but it is killing people every single day. It does not discriminate. So I wanted to have you on today to really talk about your story, but I want to get into your opioid story.
yeah.
But this season, and I've decided that we have seasons in podcast, and this is the beginning of season, let's say 2.
All right.
And I'm going to start with some questions for you so the audience can get to know you real quick.
Okay.
And I went online and looked up a few, and there were so many good ones. I just couldn't decide. But these are the ones I came up with today for you. When you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Veterinarian.
Same.
Veterinarian.
Same. Okay. If you could live anywhere in the world besides the city in which you live, where would it be?
Marbella, Spain.
I knew you were going to say that. Do you prefer text, email, or talk?
Oh my God, that's a great question. It depends on the situation. I know that's not the right answer, but I always prefer talking.
Me too.
And text and email are so efficient. But the weird thing about me is I always voice text. I used to never do that, and I literally now cannot text without voice texting.
I think I'm gonna have to start that. Yeah, you send like your voice and
no, you just literally on the bottom of the text, there's a little microphone. You click it and you talk into it, and then you unclick it and it repeats everything that you say. But you have to put punctuation in there, which is funny because I'll be like, "Hey Liz, it's Hamilton, period." And then what happens is I'll leave you a voicemail and I'll put the punctuation in the voicemail because I forget I'm not voice texting.
So you have to be. I think voice memos are the way to go, because I feel like sometimes in a text or an email, I talk a lot. And so I have to give a lot of descriptions about everything I'm trying to say. I can't when people say put it in an email, I'm like, ah. So yeah, and it also depends on the person, right?
I know, very much so.
I hate to say that, but
it's true. It's true.
And the last one, what's your biggest pet peeve? Quick.
Oh my God, I have lots of them. My mom's biggest pet peeve was when people drive convertibles and have the windows rolled up. My biggest pet peeve, without question, is people that drive in the left lane slow.
Oh my God, me too.
It literally pisses me off beyond belief.
You want to know what mine is?
What?
People chew or breathe in the same room with me.
Chew or breathe?
Yeah. They can't breathe out loud and they can't chew out loud. It's called misophonia. I literally feel like I'm going to kill somebody.
Well, how do you go to dinner with people?
Oh, well, dinner's fine. But at my house, people know that they can't sit right next to me if they're chewing.
Oh my God.
It's bizarre. I know. I'm really weird. We'll get into that one day. But all right. So Ham, besides doing what you do every day, which is just crushing the game at Youturn Health, take us back. Like, we've gone through your alcohol story, right?
Yep.
Tell us how you got introduced to opioids. Like, where was the very first time you took one? And I know it wasn't for fun. So tell us about it.
No, I mean, when I was in active addiction from alcohol, there were times that I took opioids for pain related things, but it was random and it was quick and I did abuse them. I mean, there were times, I remember when I lived in Philadelphia and I was like 24, 25 years of age, we would snort Tylenol 3 with codeine and drink and watch the football game.
What?
But that was, it was kind of the same thing. It was like my same relationship with ecstasy and marijuana and stuff like that. it would be every now and then, and that would just be the end of it. It was nothing that I was addicted or dependent on.
Gotcha.
But what happened is when I got sober back in 2012, Jesus, how old was I? I was 42 years of age. I was in the best shape of my life, and I blew out a disc in my back and immediately went into physical therapy, started getting epidurals. I had my first back surgery. 2 years later, I blew it out again on the other side. I had my second back surgery. A year later, they had to fuse my L5S1, which is the one at the bottom, and then I had to clean up a year after that. So that's when they put me on opioids. When that first surgery started, I went on Percocet, and it was, I mean, it's the same story everybody has. I was on 5 milligrams. I would cut them in half.
Wait. Let's pretend the audience has no idea when you say it's like everybody else says. I really like to pretend that someone is listening out there that isn't in the business like we are and has no idea what you mean when you say, so they gave you a bunch when you left the hospital, or
I went to a pain management physician because I was in so much pain. I had trouble walking. It was very intense stuff.
after your surgery?
Before my surgery, during the surgery, and then I just stayed on them from that point on because I was always in pain. I mean, the surgery relieved the nerve pain, but I still had tremendous back pain. So for those of you who don't know, there's a lot of different drugs called opioids: Percocet, Darvocet, which really isn't used that much, Vicodin, hydrocodone. And Liz, would it be helpful if I tell everybody a quick analogy of the brain and how they work and all that stuff?
Yeah.
So every single person listening to this has mu receptors in your brain. There's these little receptors. You probably have, I'm going to make it easy, we probably all have about 1,000 of them. And what happens is when you have sex with your partner, when you see a really pretty sunset, when you get into pain, those mu receptors release this chemical called dopamine, which is a naturally occurring chemical, and it makes you not be in pain. It makes you feel exhilaration, whatever it is, blah, 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 blah. But there are times where the pain is so overwhelming that they've created these drugs called opioids that they bind to the mu receptors and they release synthetic dopamine, which does the same thing, just more. What happens is, and when I said most people know this, there is this thing called tolerance. With what happens is when you take them, after a while, they don't work anymore. You have to take a higher dose or you have to take more. The reason that happens is because our body is meant to be in homeostasis. So when all my mu receptors are coated by Percocet, the way the body responds is they double the number of mu receptors. So they create another 1,000 mu receptors. So now I've got 2,000 mu receptors, and the same amount of Percocet I was taking doesn't coat all the mu receptors. So you have to take more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew that or not. And so I was on it for like 6 years. And I was, and this is the coolest thing about this story. There's a big misperception out there that people are using opioids. Heroin is an opioid. They're using these drugs because it's the most exhilarating feeling in the world. It's a high like no other. I will tell you, it did give me a slight bump of energy. It did make me feel decent, but it also got me out of pain. The biggest challenge with opioids is if you don't take them after you've been on them for a while, you are going to want to die. You are going to feel so sick. It feels like every organ in your body is trying to crawl out of your body. It's the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life.
All right, well, let's back up. So you're taking these as a maintenance. You're not getting high. You don't take them because you want to get high. You're functioning great family life. Nothing is being affected. So I think some people would say, wow, I mean, kind of like a MAT program. Why would you ever get off? Why would you ever get off of those if you're in pain?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my story is really interesting. So I was on them for about 5 years, and because I started Youturn Health and I know a lot about addiction and I know about overdose, I said, you know what? I probably shouldn't be on these drugs. And so there is a drug that people may or may not know about called buprenorphine, Suboxone, methadone. These are drugs that fall underneath what we call medication-assisted treatment. people that are trying to get off opioids, you can go get a prescription, you can go on these medications. They're less addictive. There's a threshold, so it's very hard to overdose on them. Less street value, blah, 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 blah. And it's a way to end up getting you off the drug. So I went to a doctor and I switched to Suboxone. I had to go through withdrawals for a period of time, for like an hour, a couple hours. And then I switched to Suboxone. And it's really fascinating, Liz. My wife, who is the sweetest lady in the world, she hates medication. And she looked at me one day after I had been on Suboxone for about 30 days, and she goes, "Why are you on this drug?" And I go, "Because I run a healthcare company focused on addiction." I gave her all the reasons. And she goes, "But Hamilton, you can't walk." She goes, "You're in so much pain, like it's not doing any good." And so I literally switched back to Percocet because of the pain. The fascinating story is about a year and a half ago, I had a total knee replacement, which was a shit show, but I had a knee replacement, got it done. I was sitting at this very desk 4.5 months after I had the knee surgery. And all of a sudden I thought about it and I go, you know what? My back doesn't hurt anymore. When I had the knee surgery, it corrected whatever was wrong with me and my back didn't hurt. And so the light went off and I'm like, okay, now I really have to get off these drugs because I didn't need them. At that point, it hit me. I don't need these drugs anymore.
All right, wait, tell me about Suboxone. It does not help with pain. It simply is something to replace the feeling that you get from, I'm not sure I
Yeah,
understand.
so there's a lot of different thoughts about this. They do say that Suboxone has pain relief properties. It is supposed to help you with pain. The interesting thing that I learned through this is once you've been on opioids for a long period of time, they actually cause pain. And the guy that I went to, the addiction specialist, because of the way they coat the mu receptors and the way they screw up the homeostasis in your body, the opioids actually cause pain. So when I got off the opioids, and I'll go through that journey, and once I was finally off of them, I haven't had any pain in my body since then. I mean, I have the normal aches and pains of being a 54-year-old guy, but the pain that I experienced before was gone. What Suboxone does, it's an opioid, which is very important for people to know because families a lot of times will say, "Oh, why are you switching to this drug?" They'll go Google it and say, "Oh, it's an opioid. You can't be on that." But it has different properties. It has a threshold. So basically, you can take a lot of it and you won't have respiratory failure. You won't overdose on it. So, but it is supposed to have some pain properties. It just does not work anywhere close to the way real opioids do.
So the main difference, you can't die on it. That's a no-brainer.
You can't die on it, and it's legal, and you don't really run the risk of going and getting a fake Suboxone pill. At least not today, you don't. And so it's much safer. That's probably the best way to describe it.
Actually, I bet you can overdose on it if you take enough, because I think you can pretty much overdose on anything, but you don't want to overdose. You don't want to, it doesn't have the properties where you want to continue taking it. Maybe we
Here's
need
the way I would, here's the way I would think about it. Opioids, and I don't want to mislead people. Opioids, if you're predisposed to it, opioids does make you feel good. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like when you and I used to party and you used to do coke and do alcohol, the greatest thing in the world, or I did ecstasy and alcohol, the greatest. It's not like that. It does make you feel good. Suboxone, the best way to think about it is it just makes you feel normal. It doesn't make you feel sick.
Gotcha. Okay.
So anyway, so then I came to the decision that I got to get off these things, and I researched it, and I talked to a good friend of mine.
When it gets ugly, right?
This is when it gets ugly. So I made the decision, and you know me very well. I'm a huge planner. So I went and talked to this doctor who's an addiction specialist. He walked me through it. And by the way, we need to have Dr. Laktakar on the podcast because he has one of the coolest stories in the world.
Okay.
But he's like, look, it's going to take 48 hours. You're going to come in. We're going to get you hooked up to comfort medication. You're going to stop taking the opioids. You're going to go into withdrawals, but they're not going to be bad because we're going to have you on all these drugs to keep you good and everything's great. You're going to come back in the next day. We're going to do the same thing. And then you're going to leave on Suboxone. We're going to keep you on it for 4 days, a week. We're going to wean you off of it. And then you'll be done and you'll be good. I'm like, awesome. So I had it all planned out. I scheduled the appointment so that I knew that the day I walked into that appointment, I would be out of opioids. I would be done. I would have nothing left. So I woke up that morning and I went to his office. So I go to the office, sit down, they hook me up to an IV, and then I start going into withdrawals, which is normal. The weird thing is the normal meds that they use to help people did not work. They actually worked reverse. So I started hallucinating. I started having horrible muscle spasms. It got so bad, Liz, that they had to send a nurse home with me that night. I was there. I was supposed to leave at 5. I was there till like 8 o'clock. My wife and my daughter came and picked me up, one of my daughters. They took me home. A nurse came home with me, and I laid in bed and twitched and spasmed and hallucinated until I ended up being so exhausted at 2 a.m. I finally passed out. So that was the first day. Next day, woke up, went back. I basically was passed out the entire day. The second they gave me the Suboxone, I felt normal. It was crazy. I felt totally normal. And then they immediately started weaning me off of it. So that was on Thursday. Friday, I went for a run. I went and played golf Friday afternoon. Saturday, same thing. And every day they're cutting the dose. And so Sunday was my last day taking Suboxone. And Sunday morning, I crashed. From Sunday morning for about 10 days, I was more exhausted than I've ever been in my life. The only thing I can compare it to, and I can't compare it personally, but I've seen people, is being on chemo. I would wake up every morning at 5 o'clock. I would start working. At 12 o'clock, I would get up. I would basically shuffle to my bed. I would sleep till about 6:30. I'd wake up for 7 minutes, eat dinner, and pass out again. That lasted for 10 days. You want me to keep going? Or you got questions?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to say, just make an observation that, if someone says, why don't they just quit taking that? What is wrong with them? Or, why can't they get off of it? Well, hearing your story, I would be terrified to quit taking something.
Yeah, and my doctor even admitted to me that he made a little bit light of it because he wanted me to go through with it. But he did say, he goes, Hamilton, you had one of the worst recorded that I've ever seen cases of withdrawals for somebody that was on prescription opioids. Now, by the time I got off, I was taking probably 120 to 140 milligrams a day, depending on the day, which is a lot. But it was still really bad. So after 10 days of that, I started to get a little bump of energy back, but my metabolism or my temperature in my body completely flipped. So I live in Arizona. It was 90, 100 degrees outside, and I felt like it was 25 degrees. It was almost like reverse menopause. I was freezing. I think you know this story. I had a board meeting in Dallas, and I sat in the board meeting with a jacket on, a blanket, and had it pulled up around my head for 2 days. And I told everybody what I was dealing with, but so the bottom line to the story is 36 days of this. And the problem is it just lingers. It lingers. It doesn't feel like, it may get like a half a percentage better every day, but you feel like you're never going to get better. I remember looking at my wife one day, and you know me, I'm the furthest thing from suicidal, but I looked at her and I said, I know why people commit suicide.
Wow.
It was that bad. And now here's the cool part. On day 37, I woke up and I was the best I had felt in years. And from that day, I have zero pain. I have my life back. It's like I have never been on them in my life.
That is amazing. What would you say to someone who is looking to get off of them, but maybe doesn't have the resources that you have? Is Suboxone available to the general public in America?
Yeah, I mean, you need to go. Yes, there's Medicaid clinics that do it. There are tons of clinics around this country that do it. I mean, look, I don't want this to be a commercial for Youturn Health, but we can help you get through that process. I think the main thing to take away from this is, I thought about this as I was telling the story. Yeah, it was bad, but I was also committed to it. There are also people that will go on Suboxone, and to your point, they'll stay on Suboxone for the rest of their life. And who cares? I mean,
Right.
if you're taking a prescription drug under the guise of a physician, you know, and that's what you need to do to change your life. I mean, you know how I feel about this. I think we need to stop counting people's sober days. I always say this: if we can take a heroin addict that lost their family, lost their job, basically lost everything, and they can get on Suboxone or stop taking heroin, and maybe they drink a beer every night, which I know goes against everything that recovery community believes, but they're a normal drinker and they get their life back and they get their job back and they get their family back. Why do we care? Like,
Exactly.
why do we give a shit? And that's where this needs to go, because more people, I mean, you know how I feel about this. The big issue is getting into recovery is the scariest thing in the entire world.
Yep.
Because you're going to change everything about your life. You're going to quit something that you've loved for a long period of time immediately, and you've got to sign up to do this for the rest of your life. And people are like, screw that shit, dude. I'm not doing it.
Right.
Now you and I both believe in abstinence. That's the route we chose, and I needed to choose that for me. But you know what I've learned through this process is not everybody has to do this, and it doesn't have to be that scary.
No, it doesn't have to be that scary. And abstinence does work for me, but that doesn't mean I judge anyone who it doesn't
Right.
work for, and that they need something to get through the day to help them not go to another thing that's more harmful. Harm reduction works. And I really want the public to get educated on it, or else we're going to continue to lose more and more and more people from opioid overdoses. I really appreciate you sharing your story about that. And I, you know, people would never have known that you were taking Percocet every day. And
Yeah.
that's another misconception. When you hear about opioids and people on heroin and stuff, they're really probably acting pretty normal.
Yep.
And it can go hidden for years and years. And that's what I've heard. I had another guy on here recently, Katie's brother, and he said, you know, no one knew. I was the one who knew, but I took the pills every day. And until it got out of control, he, you know, couldn't get any more pills and had to go to heroin. Then it became a little more obvious, but it's really a hidden thing, popping pills. And so anyway, I just appreciate you sharing your story today. And I also want to tell everyone that you're going to be a host with me on several upcoming podcasts, and as many as I can get you on. And so we're going to have a really good time this fall.
No, I agree with you. But hey, before we go, I want to
Yeah.
go back to something you just said, because
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about this. I was very lucky. I had a doctor, whether he was right or wrong, that always gave me the pills. He always wrote the prescription. I did what everybody does when you get this. I counted my pills. I made sure I had enough.
Right.
Made sure my appointment, I already always met it. But the biggest challenge is, and I want to repeat this, the issue is if you don't take that pill. Now, here's a fascinating thing. You don't know this. 3 days after I detoxed,
Mhm.
I got a call from my pharmacist. I was sitting in my bed, passed out, phone rang. I got a call from the pharmacist, and he said, Mr. Baiden, I just want to let you know that we've made the decision. They were a specialty pharmacy, that we're no longer going to be carrying opioids. And
Wow.
so I would have had to go find, and it's not easy to walk into a Walgreens and get 90 opioids a month. It's just not easy to do it. It is extreme. Like, I would have been screwed.
But that's
And
good, right? That they're making it harder or not?
well, I mean, this is where I have two schools of thought. If that had happened and I had been someone else, I would have turned to heroin, because you have to, because
Wow.
you see
Okay.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
like years ago, when everybody started caring about the opioid epidemic, and they were like, pharmacies should not be dispensing this, doctors shouldn't be writing that much. Well, that's all great for the person that breaks their leg and is going on opiates. Just give them 3 or 4 days.
Right.
That's the right decision. But when you have people that have been on opioids for a period of time, and I think this is a really important discussion, because I don't think I was addicted to opioids. I think I was dependent on opioids. I know the difference because of my journey. But my body was, and this is fascinating, Liz, because you've lived through this. When I got sober from alcohol, it was completely emotional. There
Yeah.
was not a lot of physical. It was mean, there was I mean, my hangovers, and it took me a few days to sober up physically.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was more emotional. Opioids was not emotional at all. It was 100% physical.
Interesting.
It was
Okay.
100% physical. But my point is if you don't get the medicine, you
Uh-huh.
will find a way to get it.
Okay. That is good to hear. I mean, good information to have because I really just feel like people aren't as educated as they need to be about what's going on with this crisis and how easy it is to get addicted and how easy it is to hide it and how hard it is to come off. So we've got to
Yeah.
come together. I feel like as the prescriptions lessen, the MAC clinics or the places available to get Suboxone need to rise. It needs to, be an equal balance there. Um,
100%. And here's the way we solve this. Number one is, and we believe Youturn Health can do this. And if you're out there listening and you want to create something that can do it as well, by all means do it. We're not saying we have a monopoly on this, but number one, we have to meet people where they at in this journey. And we believe the right way to do that is to use people like me, people that have been through this, that we can pair up with people and say, look, there is another way to do this. You don't have to go to heroin. There are medication available, but they need support. I mean, that's the one thing that I took away from this. If I didn't have Rich Jones, if I didn't have you, if I didn't have all my friends that knew what I was going through, and I rapidly talked about it, there's no way I could have done this on my own. My family supported me. So I can't imagine laying in a gutter trying to come off heroin with no one to talk to.
yeah.
I personally can't imagine some of these virtual companies that do really good work. They send you the Suboxone to your house, or you do a telemedicine appointment, you go pick up the Suboxone, and then you stay at home and you detox on your own. I don't know how people do that. No way, no how, no
Yeah.
can do.
Yeah. It'd be too easy to just go back to where you felt better because yeah, I think having a peer or someone who's been through it that can walk you through the detox process and then the 36 plus days on, yeah, I think definitely peer support. And that's where we come in and can get you to the clinic and then be your support, through the whole journey and never leave your side. So I think, um, I just really commend you on your honesty about everything you've been through. And that is why we have this company. And that is why you do what you do every day. So thank you, Hamilton Baiden, for being my guest today and for being my future co-host and for just everything you do. I appreciate your time. I know you
Well,
don't have any.
same,
So
same to you, my friend. It's good to see you. And I look forward to what we're going to be doing going forward.
thanks. And everyone come back next week for You Learn, You Turn. Thank you.